So let's just admit this is an odd passage, or curious at least. I mean, what's the point of God telling Moses, you can see my backside, but not my face? And there's very little scholarly consensus about it. So, but if we go back, Moses and God have been having a lot of back and forth conversations, and really they're actually arguments, some of them quite heated. Because after that golden calf debacle, God was really angry. But Moses dared tell God, calm down, and God did. But I think it may have been one of those last straw moments that broke God's heart. I mean, nobody gets quite as angry as when they have felt betrayed. Because all God ever wanted was a people with whom God could dwell. All God ever wanted was a relationship with people, to try to be in relationship. And all the people ever did, the ones released from slavery, and sometimes us, all they'd ever done was disappoint God, complain, disappoint, and betray. In Moses and God's most recent conversation/argument, after some back and forth about, these are your people, no, these are your people, well, God agreed, my presence will go with you and I will see you to the end. But Moses thought, why not push my luck and ask for just one more thing? Let me see your face. But God had had enough. Enough. So God refused, but would allow Moses to see God's backside after God passed by. And that's odd, right? Or just curious. Now, to me, if you spend some time in the back and forth of this story, I think it comes down to a broken heart once too many times. A relationship that has soured from one too many betrayals. Or at least that's one interpretation. But another interpretation is that the glory of God can only be seen from behind glory in literal hind sight. And if that's the case, it is one way we could frame our past year as a church, not in broken relationships, but in looking back at how relationships have been affected by our separation. There was a common theme when I asked people in our Touch Base Tuesday group, what's one way the church has brought joy to your life this past year?
There is not one way. David, you shouldn't ask that question. There is so many ways that have brought joy to my life during this time. New people, new ideas, laughter, and support from a community I really have gotten a deeper love of.
For me, it's been the only way I can continue to sing safely through Billy's acapellas and sending in videos. And I really miss singing. So that's been a big thing for me during the pandemic.
I love the fact that our church has adapted so well to the virtual services. It's a joy to be able to feel as if we're all together on Sunday morning.
And I find the Sunday morning service very, very valuable and fulfilling. Like Mindy said, we're still able to sing, whereas some churches that are meeting in person aren't singing. So we have that ability. We have the ability to watch it on Zoom or Facebook or YouTube later. But I think that the live in-person Zoom meetings, whether they're on Sunday or throughout the week in the different formats, are invaluable, and I relish them a lot.
I love the flexibility of Zoom, and we get to have the experience of being together in these meetings and getting to know each other better. And whatever mood we're in right then that day, it's okay. We're going to support each other. That's a beautiful thing. And on Sunday morning, you can be doing something else and still get totally enriched by what's happening Sunday morning. You can pull up any part of it. Every day there's an inspiration available for us. This is really wonderful.
I'm participating in the women's group and this group and lunch and lectionary on Thursdays. And I just get so much joy and meaning out of every one of those meetings. It gives, for one thing, these meetings during the week give structure to the week that I know on Tuesdays. I'm looking forward to the women's group in the morning and touch base Tuesday in the afternoon. And then on Thursdays, I look forward to lunch and lectionary. And so, and of course on Sunday, the worship service, but it just helps me pace myself, I think, through the week.
I don't think that we can recognize the last 6 months without mentioning the morning reflections that that Terry and David and Jeremy are doing.
Exactly.
David, let me throw the question back to you. What's the one thing you have to speak and you and Terry have to speak?
Well, you're right about one thing. But one thing is that people have really adapted to this new reality in joyful ways. I don't hear a lot of moaning about what it used to be. I hear a lot of anticipation about what we're becoming, and it's great to be the leader of a group of people who are excited about the future and not complaining about the past, speaking about our Exodus journey. How about you, Terry?
I would say that one thing for me has been, it involves two things. The groups that we've had and diving deeper into gratitude and prayer, they have both been meaningful group experiences. And the thing that I really like about those group experiences is I have been able to create relationships with people who live in Texas and South Carolina, and the people from Denver that I have yet to meet in person. And that has just been an incredible way to deepen and strengthen our relationships, both with ourselves and with God. So those have been great.
If I had told you in March that we're going to be away from each other, apart for 8 months or longer, but that you will feel closer to one another than ever before, you would have laughed out loud, right? I mean, that's impossible, but in hindsight, glorious. And not just people you've known for years, but you will start meaningful new relationships with people in the church from around the country. And so I asked the participants in the Thursday Lunch and Lectionary group a similar question. How has the church brought you joy or hope or transformation during our pandemic separation?
Hi, I'm Susan. I'm a very new member, and I think that three things that Park Hill has done that bring me joy. First of all, is the welcome. They're really serious about welcoming newcomers, and I felt very embraced by the groups that I participated in. The second thing that the church has done during the pandemic is that it's offered so many things online and hasn't seen non-in-person things to be an impediment to connecting. I think there's so many opportunities to connect during the week and during worship and during various groups. So that's been wonderful. And I think also what brings me joy is the forward dynamic of the church. It's not just waiting in a holding pattern for the doors to reopen again. Instead, it's moving forward with its vision of the future and what the church as people can do, and not just the institution.
Hi, I'm John. I would just like to share that I have been abroad as a global nomad for many years and experienced quite a bit of fear coming back to America. After all, what we've known about America has been mostly unpleasant lately. But really found a home at Park Hill, a place where I feel welcomed and people who affirm a lot of hopeful things for me. And it's especially during the COVID time been the men's group, which I only found my way to when it was online. I really love the way that people know each other, have known each other for a long time, share together, support each other. And I'm really looking forward to moving into that and becoming a part of it.
This is Marlene. I have been a part of this church for 50 years. And so many of the people I know in this congregation and have known for a long time. But what I found is that on Zoom, I have learned about them in a whole new way and at much deeper level. And that's been really important to me as we've moved along in this tough time.
And I'm Bob. I find that I am more connected now to the church since I prioritize at least 3 meetings a week, including the service itself. And I am finding a different relationship with people I know and people like Laura that I missed because she couldn't get to church. I now can talk to her every week. And Edie, who I knew sings, but I rarely have had a individual conversation like we can have on Zoom. So I think it's opened a lot of doors for me.
I'm Martha Jones, and I'm actually a member of UCC Church on the other side of the mountain. And I used to attend Park Hill many, many years ago. But I'm able to participate in some of the activities you've offered through your Park Hill 2.0 vision. And to reconnect with some people, I really appreciate the fact that you are living into what it means for us to be radically connected as Christians in this day. I appreciate the classes you're offering. I've participated in the gratitude class and in the lunch and lectionary studies and the prayer practices that Terry has offered. This is what it means for us to be able to come together across distances and across divides and be the church. Thank you for being here.
So yes, Martha, divides like the literal continental divide around us right here. These divides can be crossed digitally. And if you're interested in participating in one of our online groups, we have a list of them on our new website under the tab Online Connections. You've heard some of them mentioned, and we're always open to new ones. On an average week right now, there are easily 50 people in meetings, such as the diverse forms of learning new methods of prayer and discussing racial justice in books and adding awareness of gratitude and studying the Bible. And all of it, some of it is drop-in, all of it is to help us get through these difficult times and simply be there for one another in relationship with true laughter and real tears. But of course, there are also those for whom this is not an advantageous way to meet. This has been an especially difficult time for families, which is why we had an in-person, masked, socially distant, outdoor gathering for Sunday school a few weeks ago, and another one is going to be this afternoon. And in addition, we've created a dozen Care Connectors, a group that checks on one another, so we can make sure we're remaining in the relationship. And yet, being physically separated has not been the impediment one might have expected back in March or April, something we have only learned in glorious hindsight. But also because, as Susan said, we have chosen a forward dynamic instead of waiting to go back to Egypt. And with glorious hindsight, we can now look back and see how the plans for this have actually been we've been putting these in place without even knowing it.
About 1.5 years ago, our church started a relational campaign. And that was such an overwhelming success, and we learned so much about how to speak with one another about things that were deep and meaningful to each of us. And I feel as though we all grew a great deal in that process. And I remember thinking toward the end of last year, well, I wonder where we're going to go with this. And then 2020 came along and COVID came along, and the answer sort of unrolled right out in front of us. Because what in fact has happened, I think, is that our church leaders, David and the rest of the staff, and also a number of other folks in the church, have been really proactive in figuring out new ways that we can relate to one another. And our Park Hill 2.0 has been kind of the cornerstone of that, but there have been a number of new Zoom conversations that have been initiated in our 40 days of prayer prior to the election, and just a number of other things that have contributed to what I think is a really expanded relational importance for our church. And so for 2021, I'm really excited about seeing how that is going to play forward. I'm very much looking forward to having our new audio equipment to make our worship and meeting experiences even better than they've been. And I'm also very excited about all the people who have joined the church or are participating in our church services and our meetings. So glad to welcome all of them. And so I'm both optimistic and full of joy about what in the end this brightening period has brought to us, and looking forward to next year.
That was Pam Hennessey, who is our moderator-elect for 2021. Nate Schmitt has been our moderator through the past year. And all those ambitious plans we made for 2020, like everyone else, had to change, or at least we had to quickly adapt. And yet, Nate expresses how he's been able to remain hopeful.
Well, for me, I think the message, our particular message from our church is one that's always one of hope and equality and fairness and giving. And when the pandemic came this year, I think that message was something that I returned to all the time, and it made me hopeful about the next day or the next month. And so when I think about what the next year holds, I'm hopeful that our church's message of hope reaches a far greater audience and gives even more people that sense of peace and hope and optimism and some motivation to give and be more fair to the people around them. And I think in the time we are now in the transition that we make as a country, I can't imagine a better message to send out into the world.
We have been blessed as a church with phenomenal leadership this year. In addition to Pam and Nate, who've been incredibly hands-on, incredibly helpful. In particular, I want to give a shout out to Beth Harris and Carol Spenceley, because they've had to learn and embrace a whole bunch of new technologies to make it easy for us to give online. And since Tammy, who's now working for the church remotely from Texas, and who would have thought a year ago one of our staff could live in Texas and work? Well, but because of that, Beth has had to take on additional responsibilities, but always so graciously. And Bill McCarron, one last shout out, who has been working so diligently every day to get our church ready for everything ready for Park Hill 2.0 equipment to be installed next month. And I have to say thank you to our staff. Every single one has spent time attending webinars, watching training videos, learning, adapting, and growing to meet the needs of our congregation. But it helps, of course, that we serve a congregation that's eager for the future. So many, many thanks to you, to everyone, and many thanks to God, to whom we give all of our gifts.